Chapter 17. Billy stood in front of one of the viewing ports, watching the streams of light strung like thin, crooked tubes of bright neon across the dark background. She hadn't spent much time in space, not since she'd been a child, and this kind of travel was new to her. She stared, trying to remember her parents during happy times, but their bloody end kept jamming itself into her thoughts. Since Wilkes had come to see her that first time, the reality the doctors had tried to wipe kept bobbing to the surface, like floats on a pond. The truth was rising, and it would not be denied. All the dreams had been real. "That's an illusion, you know," came a voice from behind her. Billy turned and saw one of the Marines, Beulah, standing there. "The improved gravity drive means we can spend less time in hypersleep, but the multidimensional matrices of the butterfly field turn dots into lines. Something to do with some esoteric particle, chronons or impiotic zoons or some such." "I wonder what Easley saw in his last seconds," she said. It was a rhetorical question, but Beulah shook his head. "I don't know. I can't imagine why he would have gone EVA and taken a grenade with him." "Some kind of depression," the colonel says. "Maybe Easley was running from monsters." Again Beulah shook his head. "I don't think so. We were pretty close. It doesn't make any sense he would suicide. Besides, there are a lot of easier ways." Billy nodded. Blowing yourself to bits in deep space was not her choice of an entry to the final chill. "I don't trust Stevens," Beulah said. "He doesn't have any command experience in the field, and I think he wanted to hush the whole thing up. If we're successful in our mission, whatever it is exactly, then up levels will overlook a few bodies. But if we fail, then the little things will count." "I hate to disillusion you, Beulah, but if this mission doesn't succeed, we'll get eaten by things with big teeth, or else turned into puppy chow for the baby things with little teeth. We'll all end up on the cold ground as lumps of alien dung for the bugs to fight over." "How colourful," Beulah said. "Telling it like it is. I've seen these things work. You sound like Wilkes." He stood there for a second, and she could see he was uncomfortable. "Come on," Billy said. "I'll buy you a cup of what passes for coffee." "Okay, yeah." In the mess hall, Ramirez was waiting for a self-heating meal packet to cook. He grinned at Billy and Beulah when they came in. The two of them sat at an expanded plastic table with their paper cups of the vile ship's brew. "Wilkes must really think a lot of you to bring you along. You know Stevens will hang him out to twist when we get back, no matter what face-saving shit he's telling us now." Billy sipped the coffee, made a face. "Yeah, Wilkes and I, we understand each other." "I'll bet," Ramirez said, as he put his tray down on the next table. "Wilkes, he's an expert in cradle rubbing, eh?" "Shut up, Ramirez," Beulah said. "Hey man, I'm all for a little pussy myself, but not so green." Beulah came up, caught Ramirez under the chin with the V of his thumb and fingers, and shoved him back against the wall. "I said, shut the fuck up!" Ramirez's voice was choked when he tried to speak. "Hey man, fuck! Let go!" Billy saw the tendons in Beulah's hands standing out. He was practically holding the bigger man off the floor, pinned to the wall like a struggling insect. He seemed too strong for a man his size. Abruptly, Beulah relaxed, pulled his hand away. Ramirez rubbed at his throat. "Crazy, man, you know that?" He turned and walked out of the room, leaving his steaming dinner behind. "Why did you do that?" Billy asked. Beulah looked flustered, embarrassed. "He's got a big mouth and he shoots it off too much." "That's it?" "Yeah." Billy left it alone. There was something else here, but she wasn't sure what it was. She wasn't sure she wanted to know what it was. In his quarters on the chase ship, Massey sat Caesar and concentrated on his breathing. He had never learned to meditate as the masters did, but he could use it to calm his system. Sure, he exercised his body, practiced fighting techniques, drilled over and over again with weaponry, but these things brought him no joy. They were to keep him crisp, to maintain his cutting edge, nothing more. Being in top shape was part of the business, necessary, and he trained himself as if he were a prized show animal. Proper diet, enough rest, technical mastery as required. No more, no less. He was the equal of any serious athlete, and against the few who might be in better physical shape or with faster reflexes, he augmented himself with drugs or figured ways to cheat. If you wanted a man dead, it was better to shoot him in the back from long range than to stand facing him like some hollow-vid hero. That was a fool's game. And since the last man standing was the victor, it was always better to slant things your way when possible. Soon another test would come. He must be ready for it. So he sat. But it was not mindless meditation, but mindful scheming that filled him. In a contest like this, there could be no second-place winner. To be second was to be last, and to be last here was to be dead. "Have you got a first name?" Billy asked, as they toured the magazine. Here were racks of carbines, canisters of gas, grenades, and other hardware, all securely stored under the QM's seal. Beulah said, "Yes, Mitchell." "Mitchell," she said, testing the word. "Mitch?" "If you like." Billy turned to look at the racks of small arms under their clear steel cases. Beulah put a hand on her shoulder to point her towards the display model. "Don't touch me," she said. He snatched his hand away. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean anything by it." "It's okay. In the hospital, when somebody put their hands on you, it almost always meant you were in trouble. After the hand came a derm patch or an injector to fill you with chem that made you sluggish and stupid." He sighed. "Yeah, I can understand that. Can you? Do you know what it's like living most of your life in a medical unit full of crazy people?" "No," he admitted, "but I've spent my fair share of time in hospitals. Not fun places." He changed the subject. Here's the basic weapon we're using on this mission." He pulled out the demo model, a dummy, from the rack. "This here is your 4.8 kilo fully automatic electronic blowback operated caseless 10mm M41E carbine," he said, as if reciting a litany. "It has an effective range of 500 meters. Holds either a 100-round magazine of anti-personnel, a 100-round magazine of armor-piercing, or a 75-round magazine of rainbow tracer ammunition, and mounts a 30mm pump-operated grenade launcher under the barrel with a range of 100 meters. Officially." He grinned. "Unofficially, you can't hit anything smaller than a subway car past a couple of 100 meters, because the sights are for shit, and if the grenade goes farther than 50 meters before it hits the ground, you must have a god who likes you. At close range, however, this is a mean machine, and you don't want to be on the receiving end in anything less than full Class 7 spider silk armor, or you get turned into bloody mush." He held the weapon out. "Take a look. It won't bite." Billy held her smile in check. The model number had changed, but the basic weapon was not that different from the one she had dreamed about. No, not dreamed about. Remembered. This part of the dreams had come back to her dozens of times over the years. The instructions that Wilkes had given her were burned into her, as if branded by white-hot metal. She took the carbine, thumbed the magazine catch, and popped the dummy, checked to be sure it was empty, then slammed the magazine back into place. She cycled the action twice to make certain the chamber was cleared, then stroked the grenade launcher's pump twice to make sure the loading tube was empty. She pulled the weapon to her shoulder, sighted at the far wall, both eyes open, and dry-fired the piece. The electronic trigger was rigged to make an audible click for such practice, and did so. She lowered the weapon, twisted it to present arms, and tossed it at Beulah. It had been more than a dozen years. She had not touched such weapons in all that time, but it was like she knew it would be, except the weapon felt so much smaller and lighter now than it had when she was 10. He was surprised, but managed to catch the carbine without dropping it. "Trigger's a little stiff, and it's got some creep," she said. "Your armourer should run a diagnostic on it when he gets the chance." She was showing off, but what the hell? He laughed. "Okay, I'm impressed. Where did you learn to do that?" I ran with a rough crowd when I was a kid. She paused, then said simply, "The things we're going to hunt. They killed my family and everybody I knew." "Buddha," he said, I'm sorry." She shrugged. "What about you? You have family?" "No, the Marines are my family." Billy thought about that for a second. Well, other than going off to get killed, they had something else in common. No family. "Listen, about Sergeant Wilkes," he began. "If you got something going with him..." She cut him off. "When the aliens took over our colony, Wilkes and his squad came down. He and I were the only ones left who got off the planet before they sterilized it. He saved me. I was 10 years old. That was the last I saw of him, until a few days before we left Earth. Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." "Sure you do, and that's okay. I've been pried open by experts. I got used to it." He stared at his feet. "Let me ask you something," she said. "Okay, that's fair. Why'd you really grab Ramirez in the mess hall?" He sighed. "What he said about you and Wilkes, I didn't want it to be true." "Why not?" He shook his head, stared at his feet again. It hit her why all of a moment. Buddha and Jesus in a hammock, Billy. You been taking stupid pills again? This guy likes you. Not like one of the orderlies who felt you all over when tucking you into bed, or who took out their dongs and jacked off on you when you were lying there so stoned you couldn't move. He's concerned about you. We're going off to get killed, and here's this Marine falling for you. How about that?" Suddenly, she saw him in a new light. He was her age. He had nobody but the Marines, and they were sending him off to die. He was lonely. She knew what that felt like. She reached out and touched him on the shoulder. "Hey," she said. "Mitch." He looked up from his boots, his gaze bright, pale eyes clear and searching. "Yeah?" "Why don't you show me some more of the ship?" He grinned, like a kid with a new toy. "Yeah, I'd like that." Billy was fairly certain she was going to like it too.